Greetings, brothers. Greetings, Primaris Lieutenant. Today, I've got the man, Chris Chance himself, as we dive into a competitive army list that just finished 8th in a grand tournament. If you like this video, please hit the like button. And if you want to see more Blood Angels content every week, consider subscribing. And let's get straight into it. Okay, thanks for joining us on the next episode of our competitive list breakdown. Today I'm actually joined by Chris Chance, who at Mall in the Mall just this month came 8th out of 58th. He was the highest Blood Angels placing there. There were 3 others, I think 26th, 27th and 43, so quite a gap between them. And I believe, Chris, you only lost 2 games at this tournament, and it was against the guy that finished both first and second.
Correct. First place was Admech. No surprise right now in the meta. And second place was Custodes. I lost game 1 against Admech and game 6 against the Custodes player.
You actually played Custodes twice, was it?
No, I only played against him once. Okay. I was supposed to play in round 4 against a Custodes player, and then there was a repairing for some reason right before. Then I ended up playing Gene Stealer Cult in game 4.
Okay. And sorry, I should have asked, what were the other 3 as well? Do you remember?
So game 1 was Admech. Game 2 was Admech. Game 3 was Necrons. Game 4 was Gene Stealer Cult. Game 5 was against an extremely good Tau player. And then game 6 was Custodes. Okay.
All right. Yeah, I mean, Custodes are pretty tough. I find Custodes are the reason that I left playing as a battalion, actually, because the amount of AP you need in every unit in the game, or every unit in your army, actually, I feel like needs to be a lot, because otherwise they're just saving on ridiculously easy rolls over and over. So that's Custodes actually made me switch to sort of the double patrol, and then since then I've moved to patrol and vanguard. But the battalions are still good. Just I struggled against Custodes with my battalion. But
yeah, I made one critical mistake in the game against Custodes, which cost me the whole thing. I gambled and it didn't pay off, but it is what it is.
That happens, yeah. So let's have a look at your list first then, and we've got the picture of it here, and I think some people are probably familiar with your work. If you're in any of the 40k Facebook Blood Angels groups, you'll definitely be familiar with Chris's work, and he's also been featured on the Warhammer TV channel a couple of times. I think it was your chapter champion, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, all right. So this is the list, and I guess maybe I'll overlay it as we talk about it. But 1 relic, 2 heroes, 2 martial legacies, which will be your Contemptor Dreads, and then that leaves you with a battalion with the +1 from Dante. I believe you start with 8 CP. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. So Dante, and he is your warlord, which a lot of people still love Dante. I guess the reason for you taking him is the 9-inch reroll bubble.
It was a combination of that and the fact that I would have been starting several CP down otherwise. So it really came down to the decision of the CP more than anything, because if I'd taken the normal bot captain that I take, I'd have spent 2 more CP in there for warlord traits and things. And so putting Dante in there pushed me back up to 8 for the fewer warlord trait and relic slots that I had to take. But normally I run a bot captain with Teeth of Terra, and then I have been running Heroic Bearing quite a bit for that larger reroll bubble. So in the end, I lost 1 attack compared to the bot captain with Teeth of Terra. Mm-hmm. I gained an AP. I didn't lose any additional damage, but I did also gain the fact that Dante doesn't have to worry about, scenery. He can just jump over everything in the movement phase. Don't have to worry about going around all the ruins. And so in the end, it was kind of a trade-off. I don't feel like I really lost anything with Dante in this list, but I do feel like gaining the extra CP really helped in the long run.
Yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons. I find his epic deed kind of lackluster, honestly, but I understand why you would take him then.
Yeah, I mean, I used his free epic deed strat 2 times out of 6 games. That wasn't really why I took him. It really was just for that extra pushback on CP.
Fair enough. And what do you primarily spend your CP on then? Because 8 seems like a very healthy amount to start with.
Well, Wisdom of the Ancients, as long as the dreads are alive, pretty much gets used every turn. For if Dante has moved off, then I'm using it for reroll ones to hit. Otherwise, if Dante's standing around, I'm using it for reroll ones to wound. So acting as a lieutenant in there. And then almost every turn, an incursor or an infiltrator unit is getting cycled in or out for guerrilla tactics to get that retrieve data. Or just helping me lock out certain areas of the board if I need to. And then it just depends from there what they're used for. A lot of times, honestly, rerolls a lot of times more than anything in this list. Just being able to have that in the back pocket if needed.
Yeah, I think that's similar to what I find. I find that it's sad that I literally never use Wings of Fire anymore. I just use guerrilla tactics.
In 6 games, I didn't use it at all.
Yeah. I actually tried to use it on one of my games, and they were like, it's core units only. I was like, oh wow, okay. They changed that, and I just completely missed it. Okay, so next up we've got the Primaris Chaplain on the bike, and this guy's been made the Wise Orator, so he gets his 2 litanies at 2 pluses, and I actually love this guy, especially you've got him with the Benediction of Fury, you've got him with the Canticle Hate and the Recantation of Focus, so you're using him a bit as a shooting buff here, right?
Usually turn 1 at least, he's starting next to the dreads, and he's given one of those dreads, depending on what I've got options that I know I can shoot at. He's given one of those dreads a +1 to hit. If I feel like he can hang back turn 2 and do the same thing, he does. Otherwise, having that 20-inch move, if you need to advance, can get him in a decent spot most of the time for, that +2 to charge.
Yeah, or the rerolls on from Litany of Hate as well, right?
Yes.
I kind of fancy running one of these guys with Litany of Faith just as a mortal wound bubble protector, but I love the Wise Orator. I actually love this Chaplain model on the bike as well. I think everything about him is very good. And then, like me, because a lot of people on the channel have actually been saying that they're now dropping the Sanguinary Priest, but like me, you've still got the Sanguinary Priest, he's still the Selfless Healer, he's got Hero of the Chapter. You actually run him with Icon of the Angel, so you can reroll charges. So where do you put him in this list? Like, who's he supporting? Whereabout?
Almost every game he starts behind that wall of Blade Guard, and initially moves up the table with them to keep them, hopefully pumped up to 5 in the unit. And then from there, by the end of turn 1, if those Blade Guard have advanced with an average of 9, let's say, he's pretty much got wherever he needs to jump to from there with the jump pack. Yeah, and buff any other units that are coming down for that reroll.
Yeah, makes sense. I tend to always play my Sanguinary Guard very defensive in turn 1 as well, so it feels like you're never really going to make that turn 1 charge with a jump pack unit anyway, unless you leave them super exposed, so I don't even try. So I guess if you decide to keep your Sanguinary Guard around the Priest and get the turn 2 Blood Chalice, that's probably a pretty good option as well. How do you feel about the Priest then? Just because you're playing him in a competitive setting, obviously I play him a bit more casually, but I still think he's valuable even at 155 points.
Well, specifically in the game against Tau, he brought back exactly 155 points worth of models. He paid for himself. He brought back a Blade Guard or Vanguard Vet every turn, starting turn 2, and he paid for himself. Yeah,
exactly. So, I bring back attack bikes usually, and like a couple of bikes, and you're pretty much there as well. So, yeah, I think he's still good. I think the thing that really makes me struggle to drop him is the flexibility of the Blood Chalice. If you end up on like a small distance in turn 1 or turn 2, and you really need a couple of units into Assault Doctrine, I just think that's so valuable for 1 CP.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay, and then troops-wise, Incursors and Infiltrators, which I think most people will agree are the best troop choices. I don't know if there's too much to say about Incursors and Infiltrators. How do you see them? How do they work with your list?
I mean, retrieve data is probably one of the most, especially now that it's incremental and not just, get all or nothing, is one of the secondaries that we can rely on a lot of times. And I mean, the Phobos units just make it a no-brainer to me to take those, to use guerrilla tactics to get those secondaries.
Yeah. And I guess even stuff like All Fronts or Relentless Assault, they can help out with stuff like that as well. Yeah. And I love this. I always tell people the safety that infiltrators bring in the backfield is just crazy. I'm playing against a Sisters player now that's dropping in Seraphim with those stupid hand flamers that you can shoot at double range, and it's like, well, yeah. You won't be flaming my infiltrators at least. So yeah, I love the infiltrators.
I would have, honestly, in this list, if I could have come up with the extra points for it, I would have jumped one of those Incursor units up to a second infiltrator unit. But I didn't really feel like I could shave points anywhere else without dropping like a missile launcher, but I wanted to keep those in. Mainly for frag options, just for hordes.
Yeah, well, why don't we talk about the Relic Contemptors next then? Because you're running 2 of the Relic Contemptors, both with the twin Volkite coverings, which I think gives you heavy 16 for each. Because it's
heavy 8 for heavy 8 per arm, so heavy 16 total.
Yeah, and 6s on the wound roll do mortal wounds for those, and obviously the Cyclone Missile Launcher as well. So these guys kind of, they're, in terms of raw points cost, they're pretty much the same as a Redemptor Dreadnought. If you 5 points, 10 points. I mean, depending on your loadout of the Redemptor, they're very similar. How do you said when we chatted that they were your new toys? How do you feel about them? Yeah. Would you be going back to Redemptors, or did you prefer them?
I'll kind of bounce back and forth. Just depends on how I want to center a list, I think. They're nice. I mean, they pulled their weight most games. The Custodes list is really where they suffered the most. They are great right now against those Toughness 6 Iron Striders and AdMech. They can start picking those things off with mortal wounds, especially turn 1. You get the range on them, AP -1. You're doing some damage to those Iron Striders, which helped tremendously in both games against AdMech.
45-inch range on the covering, right?
It is.
Yeah, so it's very good. This is my ignorance. What's the range on the missile launcher at the moment? Is it 36?
It's only 36.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
so there were a lot of times that, like with AdMech, I was firing the Volkites at Iron Striders, because both lists that I played was running 9 Iron Striders.
Okay.
So I was running, I was hitting Iron Striders with Volkites, and then a lot of times I was putting frag missiles into the infantry.
It makes a lot of sense, yeah. What is it, 2d6 on the frag for the Cyclone, right?
Correct.
Yeah. It's been a while since I used Cyclone Missile Launchers. They're 25 points they're 25 points here on the Contemptors, and they're also 25 points on the Terminators. I've run Terminators a few times in 9th, but I always shy away from the Cyclone because it's 25 points. It seems like a lot, but
if I were to redo this list, I mean the Cyclones with crack, I fired crack a few times, and they either didn't hit, didn't wound, or I rolled horrible on the damage. But I got a lot of use out of the frag. If I were to just redo this list, I'd probably drop both of those and pick up another Sanguinary Guard and probably jump that Incursor unit up to Infiltrators.
Okay, that's interesting to know. Okay, so Twin Volkites are good, but Cyclone Missile Launcher is still questionable. Yeah, that's kind of what I was leaning to. I did think you'd get mixed results with the Twin Volkite, right? Like, I thought, obviously, the mortal wounds is nice, but I play against Andrew, who runs Iron Hands, and he's sometimes used those coverings against me, and it seems like if you're getting good rolls, then they can be very strong, but I guess against tough things with a good armor save, they maybe suffer a bit, and I guess that's maybe what you saw a little bit against the Custodes.
Yeah, it was a little bit. Of course, turn 1, you're going to get the most punch out of them just with the AP -1 on them.
Yeah.
But, the benefit to them right now against most of the stuff that's in the meta is it's a lot of shots. And at 2 damage each, you're hopefully at least getting some, even at AP 0, you're still getting some through just weighted dice.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you ever think that there would be a situation you would play? I think it's called adaptive strategy, right?
I did a few times
Oh, you
actually
did?
over the
Okay.
course of 6 games. Yeah, I would put a contemptor in all doctrines just to get that -1 again.
Okay, interesting. All right. Sure, I've never actually used it. I've read it a few times and thought that's really interesting. Never used it. Okay. All right. So then, I guess what else we have in this list is 5 blade guards with the sergeant with the neo Volkite pistol, and I guess you run the blade guard a bit different from me. I usually head centerboard for Oath of Moment because I feel like it's an easy one to max points. But you said you went a bit more aggressive with these blade guards.
Oh yeah, my blade guard usually run up the table. In all but one game, they ended up chopping up stuff in my opponent's deployment zone. So they headed across all the way across the table at some point in time.
And do you ever? I guess like quite often I tell people I don't think it's worth putting taking an impulsor for the blade guards. I just don't think it's necessary. Even though you were going for the opponent's deployment zone, is there ever a situation where you feel like they would have been better with the impulsor, or you're quite happy the way they were?
No, I'm happy running them the way they are. Turn one, unless you're dealing with a crater or a forest, you're getting an average roll of probably 9 to 10 inches on advance average. Push them towards the center, wherever I start them, push them up towards the opponent's deployment zone. Usually by turn 2, they're at the opponent's deployment zone unless they've been tied up by something else.
Yeah, and I suppose if you do get tied up by something else, probably you can consolidate and get some free movement out of that anyway. So
yeah.
Okay, and then the Redemptor with Stormbolter, Rocket Pods, Macro, and Onslaught. I mean, it's kind of the best way to run the Redemptor, right? It's just, they are what they are. The one weakness, I guess, with the Redemptors are they have no invulnerable save, but overall I still think they're a great unit. I think they're very cost effective, and they always do a lot of work for me.
Here's the thing about the Redemptor. In every game, they did damage. They had a decent output. But if nothing else, they soak up a ton of damage that doesn't go somewhere else. I want that Redemptor to do work, but if it soaks up a ton of stuff turn 1, turn 2, before I take it off the table, that's stuff that's not hitting everything else it's pushing up the board.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why. I think that's exactly why they're good, right? Plus, they could, you've got ways here to give them pluses to hit. So if they get profiled, you've also got Chapter Master rerolls. You can still make them effective even if they are in a low number of wounds with those.
Yeah.
Cool. And then you finished it with the most, I guess, iconic Blood Angels units at the moment. We've got the 6 Sanguinary Guard with the axes, which I guess makes a lot of sense. I think axes are going to be, what with the new orc rules and stuff, I think axes are going to be coming back around as the most popular choice. And then you've got 10 Vanguard veterans here with Lightning Claws and all Storm Shields. So I'm assuming that you combat squad did the Vanguard veterans, right? Or did you keep them?
Only in 2 games I combat squadded. Other games they stayed as one 10-man unit.
And how did you find the veterans as a I've never run them as a 10-man actually.
I didn't. The 2 games that I did combat squad them, it was because there were several blast weapons around. In the games that I didn't, there really weren't that many blast weapons, so I just pushed them on forward. The benefit of running them as a full 10-man is I don't have to worry about placing a chaplain just right to connect with 2 units. I just have to tow 1 guy into his aura for those reroll hits. Same thing with the 6-up feel no pain from the priest. I only have to tow 1 guy into that bubble, and they're getting all those buffs.
Nice. Yeah, makes a lot of sense actually. I never actually thought about running them as a 10 and then deciding once you see how many blast weapons the enemy has. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, you don't have to. Plus, in this list, I was already running. I had to take them as a 10-man if I wanted 10 guys because I was already maxed out at 6 elites. So I couldn't split them in the list.
Mm-hmm.
So that combat squad ability, you can choose that after you see opponent's list when you're going to combat squad. So you can make that decision then.
Yeah. So, yeah, cool. All right. So, yeah, and I guess if anyone wants to see the list, I guess you've got, I was going to say, this is your incursors at the front here, infiltrators. are the ones with the little aerials, right?
Yeah, the infiltrators are the ones in the front center.
Yeah. Blade Guard, Sanguinary Guard, Chaplain on the bike. Dante, that's a custom Dante. You've made him yourself, huh?
It is. That's the Blood Angels Primaris Lieutenant body with Sanguinary Guard axe and head, jump pack, and then the wings off Ashtaroth. And then that's the arm, the right arm from that lieutenant body, but I scraped the bolt pistol off and replaced it with an Inferno pistol.
I see. I can see the body now that you mentioned it. Cool. And obviously the Dreadnoughts, the Sanguinary Priest, and then our Vanguard veterans. Like how you did your Lightning Claws as well. Do you airbrush them, or how do you do that?
No, that's actually a base coat of white, and then Talisar blue contrast paint, and then I edge highlight the claw with Ulthuan gray, and then dry brush the very tips with white scar.
Oh, clever. Yeah, it looks great, actually. I have literally 5 of them sitting behind me on the table that I need done for a tournament in like 6 weeks' time. So
it's a pretty easy process. Just like I said, I do 2 coats of the Talisar just to darken it down a little bit towards the bottom. And then you could probably skip the edge highlight of Ulthuan gray if you wanted to. Just dry brush the tip with white.
Yeah. Talisar's a contrast paint, right?
Correct.
Yeah, I've been finding some application for. I only own 1 contrast paint at the moment, and it's Blood Angels Red. I've been finding some ways to have fun with it, but I haven't. I don't paint my army with it. I just like maybe paint like some wings or like an Aquila or something, and have some fun with it.
Lightning Claws, the Volkites, and the Plasma are pretty much the only thing in that picture that are contrast.
Yeah. It does have some uses. I kind of like it. Maybe I need to get, like you said, like some sort of blue contrast paint and have a bit of fun with that. All right, cool. All right, so let me just break down some of my thoughts, and please, you're probably more experienced at tournaments than me with Blood Angels. I was just getting back into tournaments. I guess it was going to be like November 2018. I did my first tournament. I came 4th. I should have actually came 3rd. The guy that beat me or came 3rd didn't realize that you could only throw one grenade per unit, and he was throwing multiple grenades, and his opponent apparently didn't realize that either. And I was like, oh my god, no wonder this guy won the game, so because it was the top table, like I was just outside the top table, so I was just getting back into tournaments, and then COVID hit, so I've done nothing since I got back into the game.
This was the first major event I've been to since March of last year. So yeah,
so it's been tough, I guess. It's been tough for everybody, right? It's been even tougher for me, I guess, because I've been trying to help people with their lists, and I'm like, I'm not going to any tournaments. So I've been breaking down people's tournament lists and trying to give my 2 cents, I guess, and they are just my 2 cents. So I always tell people that we really need to focus on about 500 points of shooting now. I think that is mandatory. I think that the days of all Assault Blood Angels lists don't work in the current meta. So
no, I've not run an all Assault. I mean, other than just in fun games with friends. Competitive side, I've not run an all Assault list since the very end of 8th edition. I just don't think you can do it.
Yeah, I mean, I ran them at the beginning of 9th edition, and literally, it was the exact opposite of what I'm doing now on the channel, which is winning every game. I just literally lost every game, and I was like, okay, I'll try it again next week. We've lost again, and I was like, something's got to give. So 535 points of shooting, mainly between the Dreadnoughts. So I think we need that. It doesn't have to be Dreadnoughts, obviously. It could be any shooting, attack bikes, I guess Eradicators to a lesser extent. Land Speeders seem to be a popular choice right now. I think because people are maybe leaving attack bikes behind because the points increase. I still think they're very competitive, even at 60 points on attack bike.
If you're running on a table that has a decent amount of terrain, I really like Land Speeders because they can maneuver the terrain a whole lot better than the attack bikes can for getting in distance.
Mm-hmm. And the toughness 6 definitely helps for survivability against some against any sort of small arms fire, right? They're just
Yeah.
harder to take down. You've got your Sanguinary Guard and you've got Dante as your warlord, and we know that he's a force multiplier, and they're brilliant together. I still think Sanguinary Guard are our most damaging unit. I just don't think you run 3 squads of them anymore, which I guess was more prevalent in previous editions.
Yeah.
You've got your Phobos troops, which we already sort of touched on, how you can use them both aggressively and defensively, and I guess in your list you very much use them to perform actions as well, which makes a lot of sense. We talked a little bit about how the Vanguard veterans with Lightning Claws could be combat squadded when necessary. So in the games you did combat squad them, were they still as effective as the 10, or you just thought it was better when they were the 10?
I mean, they were effective. It allowed me to kind of split up. I split them up in the game against Gene Stealer Cults because he was running 9 Ridge Runners, and those things are blast. So I didn't want, full 3 las cannon shots coming at Vanguard vets. And with the fact that he had, a ton of cultists that could pop out of trucks, I didn't want him tying up one full 10-man unit at once.
Makes sense.
But in other games, I wasn't too worried about the melee punchback or blast weapons. So I was keeping them as a 10-man to just blend through stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, I was going to say that's about 50 attacks you would get as a 10-man once you get into the Doctrine. And I think the rerolls on the wound on the Vanguard vets, I think that's why Lightning Claws are so good. I think if one thing needed a points increase in this last FEQ, it was probably Lightning Claws, and that's the one thing that they didn't change the points cost of, right?
No, Lightning Claws went up a point, and so did the Jump Pack.
Oh, was it that? I thought it was the Storm Shield that went up a point. Maybe I'm confused.
I'm pretty sure it was the Lightning Claw that went up.
Okay.
But that as a 5-man unit went from 140 to 150 points.
Yeah. And then, we mentioned that you like to push their enemy with a large Blade Guard veteran squad. Do you save CP for Transhuman on them then?
Transhuman gets used quite a bit on them, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the advantage of running them as a 5 rather than a 6, right? For the 1 CP Transhuman. And
they're really the only real target of Transhuman in this list. I mean, the Primaris troops are usually sitting in the back holding objectives. Or coming off the table and popping up somewhere else to grab an action. So as far as being out front and center, that it's going to help tank a lot of damage on them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the Phobos units there. You can always smoke screen the Phobos units if you need to save your Transhuman for the Blade Guard, right? That's why I always think there's so many reasons to prefer Phobos over Intercessors. I wonder if one day Phobos units might get some weapon options. That would be really interesting. I would like to see that. And then, the Selfless Healer. How useful did you find Icon of the Angel in this list then? Do you think it's...
I make it a point to try to think at least a turn ahead of where the Sanguinary Priest is going to go for that reroll charge.
Okay.
So that I can position him to get as many options of rerolling charges as possible.
Nice. Yeah, I guess I'm not. I don't think I play my Sanguinary Priest more reactive. He's usually jumping around healing things, but maybe it sounds like you're able to use him a bit more offensively.
Yeah, if you can position him well and still protect him, I mean, you can still bounce him around quite a bit and be okay. I mean, I can't remember which game it was. I just remember it sticking in my head that there was like turn 2 or turn 3, the Blade Guard, the Sanguinary Guard, and the Vanguard vets were all getting reroll charge from the priest because I was able to position just right to tag them.
Nice. Maybe I need to try that. Okay, and then I suppose you've got Canticle of Hate in here as well, so you can really make your charges reliable then, right?
Yes.
Like, does this list fit, or in general, when you're playing, I take it you don't fail many charges?
It's rare. If I can position right, if I can get that chaplain where I need him to be and the priest where I need him to be, there's not many charges that fail.
Okay, and then let's talk a little bit about some strengths and weaknesses that I maybe saw, and again, just feel free to jump in. So I thought that I was trying to do some maths in my head. I was thinking like you've got 32 shots roughly from those Volkite cannons, and I mean you had some rerolls, you had some +1s to hit, so potentially maybe like 25 hits, and then if you divide 25 by sixes, I was reckoning like 4 to 5 mortal wounds per turn. Did that seem fair, or was it more?
Over the course of all 6 games, I was probably getting an average of probably 5 to 6 mortal wounds a turn.
Yeah, I mean that sounds really good. I mean,
but then again, I'm buffing up 1 to hit on 2s and reroll 1s a lot of times. 1 is usually getting chapter mastered if the Redemptor's not being chapter mastered. So you're getting quite a few hits, and then Wisdom of the Ancients is going off, or that reroll 1s to wound. So I'm between both of them. I was probably popping 5 to 6 mortal wounds a turn.
Yeah, and that's on top of any damage that they then do. Which I guess there's going to be a big swing in that damage based on the opponent's armor save because there's no AP. But
correct,
5 or 6 mortal wounds against most armies is pretty. It's pretty significant, right? And then obviously you've got a pretty large melee threat in this list as well, which I like. I mean, I think Blood Angels, we are like our main buffs are still melee related buffs, so I think it's important to have that. So it's nice. It's nice to back up that shooting with the threat, and like you said, if the enemy are taking those, if they're taking the shots, they're going to shoot back at what's shooting them, right? So they're going to shoot back at that Redemptor. They're going to be shooting at those Contemptors. So if those things are stopping the enemy from shooting, like your Sanguinary Guard, your Blade Guard veterans, your Vanguard veterans, you're actually probably you're probably happy, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I would much rather those dreads be taking the damage than the melee threat coming up, because honestly, once the melee threat gets there, it's going to cause way more damage than those 3 dreads do.
Yeah, and that's like I've been running Assault Centurions now for like 3 months. I'm right on the verge of dropping them, but they never do a lot of damage. But what they do is like people see 3 Assault Centurions walking across the battle and they go, "Oh boy, we better shoot those Assault Centurions!" And like the amount of firepower they just soak up. And it's like people ask me like, "Are they good?" And I was like, "I don't know," but people always go after the Centurions. It's like they're just that distraction Karn effects, and I guess that is, and I think that's probably it's probably a multiplier on why shooting is so important for us right now. In that you're not just weakening some targets, you're also taking a lot of fire away from your Sanguinary Guard or your other close combat units. And we talked a little bit already about like how you've got the strong OBSEC presence with the Phobos and the redeploy. Is there any other big strengths in this list that I missed, do you think?
The tankiness of those Vanguard vets and Blade Guard. I mean, they can in most situations they can soak up a lot of firepower and come out of the other side of it pretty okay most of the time. If somebody wants to dump a ton of stuff into that Blade Guard vet unit, I'm going to transhuman them, and they're going to most likely be backed up by 6-up Feel No Pain. And, they most of the time, they come out of it pretty well. There was only one game out of those 6 did my Blade Guard vets actually die as a unit.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think that the 5-man is perfect for the Blade Guard veterans. I tried running a 4 and I liked it, and I thought, oh, this 4 Blade Guard veteran is great. So I started running a 3, but I think the 3 has actually weakened my list. I think probably what you've got, 5 or maybe to a lesser extent 4, is actually amazing. Like you said, the Storm Shields combined with the 4+ required to wound is just really, really strong from Transhuman. Okay, and then so there is some weaknesses, and I think we've touched on a little bit. I guess it's just the Contemptors have a little bit of a lack of high AP shooting. I guess like 150 of their points on each Contemptor is maybe going to struggle a little bit with AP, and I guess you maybe touched on that with Custodes. Was that the reason you lost the games the game against Custodes, or was there?
No, the reason I lost the game against Custodes was because I got a little overconfident that I could take out 2 of the 3 Telemon Dreadnoughts in one turn. And so I went to the left side of the table with most of my force to engage those two dreadnoughts. And I should have gone to the right side of the table and taken out his Venatari and Shield Captain. And I killed one of the Telemon, and I just completely forgot about the strat for him to turn off all rerolls. And so I had 5 Blade Guard, 10 Vanguard Vets, a Chaplain, and Dante standing up toe-to-toe to a Telemon, and had no rerolls to hit or wound.
Yeah.
And I failed to kill that dread. And so when that happened, then the third Telemon came up, cleaned house a little bit, backed up by the Venatari that had pistol 4 shots at 2 damage each.
I was going to say, I don't remember the Telemon's melee weapon off the top of my head, but I feel like it's flat 3 damage, is it?
No, it's flat 4.
Flat 4. Okay, yeah. It's rough, isn't it? Okay, and then so a couple of things as well, I suppose, was you've got no way to prevent Overwatch in this list. Did you feel that ever hurt you?
No, honestly not. I'm not sure in 6 games, other than against Tau, how many times I actually got Overwatched.
Okay, that's surprising. But I mean, if people
maybe 1 or 2 times in each game tops, but not enough that ever hurt.
Okay.
Now, of course, Tau, there was nothing I could do to turn off that Overwatch, but I just used terrain as much as I could to deny as many of those Overwatches as possible. Yeah,
sometimes, I mean, I guess if you are, I don't want to say lucky, I guess it's more about your position. If you're smart with your positioning and you can be charging from obscuring positions, you can use that to your advantage. I guess turning off Overwatch is maybe not the biggest deal. It's not as common as it was in 8th edition anyway, for sure. Do you feel that you were any problems that you had no psychic, or you weren't worried about it?
I wasn't worried about it. I mean, here's the thing. I play against a Sisters player on a regular basis. I have got to the point where I just quit relying on any type of psychic powers, because there was almost a guarantee he was going to shut down all that psychic power anyway. So I kind of went away from psychic to the more reliable. Yes, I'm still dealing with a dice roll on the Chaplain and the Litanies. But I'm dealing with a dice roll that's on me and not the possibility of my opponent denying after I've made that dice roll. And so it's a little more of a guarantee, and I would rather go with the guarantee as opposed to, let's see if I can get this psychic power off, and then it's going to be denied.
Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that definitely makes sense. I think that's maybe why I think that Litany of Faith would be a very good pickup on the Chaplain. I mean,
I actually really considered Litany of Faith over Recitation of Focus. I kind of bounced back and forth with that a little bit before submitting the list, and then just went ahead with what I had been practicing the list with.
Remind me, I could be wrong here. Litany of Faith actually affects its core, right? So it would help with some of the dreadnoughts as well against mortals. Litany of Faith, core and characters within 6 get the 5-up shrug. Yeah, I think that's
in this list. It would have been everything was core. So
I think that's what the tournament I'm actually going to is a non-Forge World tournament. So pretty much everything that I'm running is core as well. Next, so.
Honestly, I think the Soul Warlord trait is a good option depending on what warlords you're running to give them as a second trait, because it gives you that same aura, but you're not having to worry about that 2+ on your litany.
Mm-hmm. And then 2 other things I thought maybe that were slight weaknesses. I guess it sounds like up until now, none of these are weaknesses for you, which is fair enough. But maybe a little bit of lack of 3 damage weapons. This maybe only comes in to... do you know what? It maybe comes in a little bit against that Telemon you fought, or Death Guard. And I don't know if there's much to say, just other than Duty Eternal is a real thing, or Disgustingly Resilient that is very strong right now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a concern going into it. But I kind of went the other way with, even if my damage was reduced, I was throwing a lot of attacks and was just trying to hope on, the sheer number of attacks, and then like with the vets, the number of rerolls to get just for weight of dice. Had that Custodes player not turned off my rerolls, I think I could have taken that Telemon, but it is what it is.
I was going to say
I made a tactical gamble, and it came back to bite me.
The lightning claws are very good. They're good replacement for not having those 3 damage, because the reroll to the wound is just so strong right now. Yeah. Okay, and then finally, I think in some of your previous lists, I definitely saw that you were running the Judiciar, but I guess
I was. Yeah, there for a while, I was running him and giving him the 6-inch heroic intervention warlord trait, so that he had a little bit better positioning.
And did you miss him, or you weren't worried?
At this particular event, I didn't miss it really at all.
Okay.
There were very few situations where I had to worry about getting swung on first.
Yeah, I'm having the fun with this Sisters of Battle list at the moment. They've got a character now that's basically their version of the Judiciar. I forget what exactly. I think it actually is a Canoness that can take a relic that does that. So,
well, if I remember right, it's one of their upgrades that they can put on one of the HQ units.
Yeah.
The Sisters player that I run against a lot of time usually puts it on his Palatine.
Right. Okay. So I guess the guy I'm running it on has a Canoness with Morganval, and then he's just surrounded by a buttload of those new Celestian Sacrosants, and it's making my life a nightmare. It's got me like literally ripping my lists apart at midnight, thinking, "Aha!" Like that's what I was doing last night when I was supposed to be in bed. I was like, "All right, I just need to try this other list combo."
At the current moment, I really think that obviously, I don't build to just beat a certain list. I try to make all comers list, but here's a situation with the prevalence of the Sacrosants right now that I think intercessors with assault bolters have a good place, because just if you can drown those storm shields, they're only 1 wound each.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can drown those storm shields like in turn 2 with AP -1 shots, you're going to start getting stuff through there.
Yeah, I was running Inceptors with Storm Bolters, so we get Assault Bolters, so we get AP -2 in turn 2, and I actually kind of like it. I know Plasma Inceptors are still good, but it's 60 points per model. I don't know if I can justify that anymore. I'm just running Assault Bolter Inceptors now.
I've already been messing with a few other list ideas, and I'm looking at putting some Plasma Inceptors back in with the prevalence now of the big AgMech blobs, and with the T5 boys, and if they're going to run this new clan culture, they're ignoring, we're not winning them on anything better than a 4+ if it's strength, unless it's strength 8.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm probably going to start throwing some Plasma Inceptors back in.
Okay. Yeah, it's 60 points per model. Like, how many do you like? If you're gonna add them to your list, how many are you actually thinking of running?
Pre-points increase, I was running a unit of 5. So I think mixed in with stuff, I probably, to make up that points increase, probably a unit of 4.
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Okay, yeah, and then normally what I try and do is score these lists out of 50, and I basically usually tell people that anything over 40 is a pretty competitive list, because I actually think my list scores right around 42 as well. But we have had some lists that have scored higher, but I think the scoring is just an arbitrary number, right? There's no... it's just me looking at it on paper. What actually happens on the tabletop is a magnitude apart. So I think every single... And you know what? I scored you down for you have no denies, no fight last, no overwatch, and no 3 damage. And it's all things I really like, so it's totally subjective. So I give you 7.5 out of 10, but obviously in this tournament, if there was no problems, then I guess you would be higher for that. But in general, if people want to see how I scored it, then I think 3 Phobos troop choices are pretty much the best you can do for OBSEC. The only way I let people get higher is if they bring Rites of War, I give them another point. If they bring Visage of Death, I give them another half point. So
and normally my bike captain runs Rites of War and Heroic Bearing. So
yeah, you said that, didn't you? So yeah, so you would if you took back your bike captain, you'd be at the 9.5. But I guess if you felt you needed the CP, you need the CP, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was a very solid amount of firepower, especially against Horde and weaker save models. So 9.5 out of 10. Do you know what? In hindsight, that's probably kind of harsh because I think probably based on what you were saying with the number of mortal wounds, let's tweak that. I think it's probably a 9.5 against Horde lists. I don't think you didn't lose to any Horde-based lists, did you?
I did not.
Yeah, so I think
unless you want to consider the 220-man blob AdMech list that I lost to.
Yeah, I'm kind of scared about AdMech at the moment, and yeah, we were having a joke on the channel the other night. I don't know. Somebody said, because I've been complaining probably a little bit too much about our points increasing something, and someone in the chat said, I wish whoever wrote the New Sisters Codex had also written the Blood Angels Codex. And I was like, yes, what that man said, that's exactly what I wish as well. Okay.
I had not had the opportunity to play AdMech and then walk in on game 1 and get that list. Let me tell you what, I learned an awful lot because by game 2, I figured out what to do.
Yeah.
It also helped that terrain was better in game 2 than it was game 1. So.
And you crushed the AdMech player the second time round, right?
Oh yeah, it was pretty brutal.
Okay, and then yeah, we said that you may have a little bit of struggle because of the -1 damage, and I guess you did struggle against that one Custodes list with the Telemons. Telemons are hard to bring down anyway.
They are.
Even if you've got multiple wound damage, just because I was going to say, the Telemon kept the 4+ invulnerable save, didn't it? Because Leviathan lost it.
Toughness 8, 14 wounds with a 4+ invul.
Yeah, so it's like a Leviathan on steroids. It's no joke. And then I guess mobility-wise, pretty much everything in this list, bar the Blade Guard veterans and the Dread, are mobile. You kind of you had the Blade Guard veterans in the enemy's deployment zone every game, so the mobility wasn't a problem there. So it's just the Dreads. And
here's the thing, my Blade Guard don't set.
Mm-hmm.
My troop choices are what's set on objectives unless something else absolutely has to. I typically try to run my list so that it can move at any point in time. And I almost never take Oath of Moments unless there's a center objective. And then I'm still hesitant to doing it because I don't want something sitting in the middle of the board, not doing anything. And while Dreads are tanky and can take some punishment, I don't want to rely on that Dread living and sitting in the middle of the board to score me those 2 points. I would rather be able to be reactive to what my opponent is doing and force my opponent to do other stuff instead of them knowing, okay, I'm going to set something in the center of the table and it's not going to come after them.
Yeah, this may be a good point.
I think, to me, Oath of Moments can be a trap if you don't have a specific plan for Oath of Moments.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So why don't, is there, what do you think of my scoring here? What would you change?
I think it's pretty accurate. I think the biggest downside, is it depending on what I come up with is the damage 3 or better weapons. Just because of all the stuff that is -1 damage running around there now.
Yeah, I think it's in my meta it seems pretty prevalent. Minus damage or half damage and round up sort of nonsense.
I just think that I think the best options that we have for that extra damage are going to be heavy weapons on Dreads because they're core. Most of the tanks in the Codex being not core I don't feel like they're reliable enough to worry with taking, or they're just flat out overcosted. like a repulsor executioner at this point. So I think with the prevalency of the majority of our weaponry being 2 damage, we need to you're either going to put too much into getting that 3 damage or better weaponry and lack on being able to take hordes, or you're just going to have to say, well, forget the 3 damage stuff, sprinkle in a little bit, and then really lay into what we can do best, which is throw a whole lot of attacks and just hope that the weight of dice takes care of ignoring that -1 damage.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so last question then was, we already just touched on it, secondaries then. What were your favourite secondaries in this list?
I took Relentless Assault and Retrieve Octarius data in every game. That wasn't necessarily the plan going into every game, but after getting to the table, realized that those worked very well. Retrieve data was a definite going into it. I mean, I built it with the 3 Phobos troops in mind of being able to do that. With Phobos troops, with guerrilla tactics, and upon wings of fire, we've got 2 pretty decent ways of scoring retrieve data if we need to. So that one was a definite. Relentless Assault, I take that one quite a bit, and it really just depends on my opponent's list. And I never felt like the game against Custodes was the main one that I worried about whether I should take it there or not, because I knew those 3 Telemons were going to be pushing forward. I went ahead and took it, and I actually maxed it out. But the only thing that ever made his deployment zone were my Phobos troops.
Okay. Yeah, I've been there before, yeah.
Turn 1, I pulled a unit off the table and then popped them back up turn 2. And then from that point on, I mean, I got stuff over there and was able to, end up maxing it out in the end.
Well, okay.
And then my third one always floated from game to game. I never go into making a list being concrete on 3. I try to be pretty certain on 2. The third one, I play kind of reactive to the opponent's list or the mission secondary.
Yeah, sometimes the mission secondary, cough, cough, priority objective is too good to not take, right?
Yeah. Well, and it didn't help me that, game 6 was battle lines, and I absolutely hate that mission anyway with 4 objectives.
That one can be tough for us.
And ended up taking the mission secondary because there was nothing else decent enough to take against that Custodes list.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to run over this, Chris. It's very appreciated. Yeah, I mean, if you do more tournaments or something, or you've got new lists, I'd love to have you on. I'd love to have you on again. And
right now, I'm kind of toying with a heavy Phobos build using Lord of Deceit at the current moment just to see what I get out of it. Because with the last FAQ clarifying that that redeploy happens after the first turn roll off, kind of messing with that a little bit and see what I get. 3 Phobos units and some Death Company that can be redeployed aggressively or passively, depending on how the first turn roll off goes.
Yeah, I did actually think about Lord of Deceit myself. I believe, however, if you pull them off, you can only redeploy them back into your deployment zone, right?
There is nothing in this edition that says that currently.
Oh, they've changed that?
Yep.
Okay.
There is nothing in that Warlord trait that says the redeploy has to happen per the mission setup. And I have yet to, and I've conversed with several different people, I've yet to find any FAQ or core rule that declares that you cannot redeploy outside of 9 inches from enemy models and deployment zone.
Huh. I need to check that out then. I do not remember which book that was in 8th edition, but...
it was in the Shadow Spear book when it came out, and then they FAQ'd it saying that it had to be, the redeploy had to be in the deployment zone. But when 9th came across, that did not get pushed forward into the 9th edition rules. And so at this point, Now, they may come back and FAQ it now, but at this current moment, that redeploy does not seem like it has to happen in your deployment zone.
Okay, very interesting. Yeah, I mean, they need to FAQ the Ball Predator. We've been waiting on that one for a long time, don't we? It feels like every stream someone tells me, like, yeah, Ball Predators. I'm like, yeah, they're crap. Like, we're waiting. We'd love them to be good, but yeah. All right, but no, thank you so much for coming on. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
that people got a lot out of that. And you were going to send me your Instagram and any other social links that you want, and we'll put them in the video description below. So if you guys want to follow Chris, see some of his cool painting, hear about his armies, and I think in the future you're going to be doing battle reports as well.
That's the hope.
Yeah, they can check you out and follow you on social as well. And I'm sure you'll
I'll
be
go
back
ahead
on.
and apologize for anybody that follows me on Instagram right now. I'm painting my daughter's Necrons, so that's what you're going to see. So
Okay. I was going to say you are very much in and around the tournament scene, so I'm sure we'll hear another high placement from you at some point soon. I'm no doubt.
yeah, I'm hoping there's supposed to be a couple more GTs around me in the next couple months. So I'm hoping to get to those and try some more stuff out.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Please leave me a comment below if you like this type of content and tell me what you would like to see in future competitive army list breakdowns. A huge thank you to Chris for making this possible, and if you want to follow him on Instagram down below, you can definitely do that. I hope to catch you in the next video, and I think we're going to be continuing our tier list videos. You should definitely watch them. They help so much in making your army list, and I'll put a link to the playlist up above. By the blood are we made strong, brothers. Catch you in the next one. Peace.